Hi, welcome to the Hill and Ponton podcast. And today it's Carol Ponton. Today I'm here with Carrie Baker. Hey, Carrie, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. And you?
Pretty good. Busy days.
Busy days. And today we want to go more specifically into the new Pact law that talks about burn pits. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically cover who's covered, what's covered, and when it starts being covered. And then we want to take questions from all of you who have any questions about that. So first of all, just the list of who's covered. So anybody who performed after August 2nd, 1990, performed active military, naval, air, or space service while assigned to a duty station, including the airspace above, for Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, or the United Arab Emirates. Or anyone after 9/11 who performed active military, naval, air, or space service while assigned to duty stations, including the airspace above, to Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Uzbekistan, or let me see who I have down here. Or any of the other countries determined relevant by the Secretary. So anybody who served in any of those areas or the airspace above it, which is pretty amazing. And what they're covered for is, let me go down here. This is so unbelievable that I had to make a huge outline for it. So they're covered for asthma, head cancer of any type, neck cancer of any type, respiratory cancer of any type, gastrointestinal, reproductive, or lymphoma cancer of any type, kidney cancer, brain cancer, melanoma, pancreatic cancer, chronic bronchitis, COPD, chronic constrictive bronchiolitis, or obliterative bronchiolitis, emphysema, granulomatous disease, interstitial lung disease, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis, sarcoidosis, chronic sinusitis, chronic rhinitis, glioblastoma, which is brain cancer, and any other disease which the Secretary determines should be listed. So that's who, that's what, and then we get into the when, and that's really convoluted. So first of all, remember, any DIC people, they're covered now for any of these things. Any people, any of their spouse who died because of these diseases, they're covered. And so they can file a claim right away. And then they also said anybody who is terminally ill, homeless, under extreme financial hardships, or 85 or older, or capable of demonstrating other sufficient causes. All of this is effective for them right now. But then all of the other disabilities are gradually brought in. For instance, right at the date of the enactment, it will have asthma, respiratory cancer, brain cancer, chronic bronchiolitis or obliterative bronchiolitis, emphysema, granulomatous disease, interstitial lung disease, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis, sarcoidosis, chronic sinus, chronic rhinitis, and glioblastoma. So those are effective as of enactment, which is now. But the ones, a lot of others don't start until October 2023, 2024, 2025. But Carrie, talk to us about whether this is accurate or not. This is what the Pact law says.
Right. So, and for those of you that watched President Biden sign the act in the ceremony, he said he's telling the Secretary of VA to enact all these cancers and all this stuff now, immediately. So, we are interpreting that for the most part to mean that these staged effective dates, 2023, 2024, 2025, are not actually going to be sort of real, that he's telling the Secretary to start adjudicating those cases as soon as they get the law up and running, where they can adjudicate anything. Now, I understand we're probably not going to see any cases adjudicated under this law probably to the end of the year, the first part of the new year, just because VA's got to retool a whole lot of things to do this. They would still be effective, the day the law changed, but we'll obviously know more about that as time goes, but if his statement on the record, and it was in front of the whole nation, holds true, then I would think that, those staged effective dates out into the future are not actually going to be a real limiting factor. Now, there's a clause right beneath, or right sort of in that mix, that says, so let's just back up and say, well, what if those dates were active? What if they aren't going to do kidney cancer to 2025 and that type of thing? It says, VA shall not deny a claim for benefits under Title 38 for a condition or disease for which this act establishes a presumption of service connection, because the claimant filed the claim prior to the effective date.
Right.
I'm not really sure what that means, because on its face, it says, all right, you file a claim for kidney cancer today with the knowledge that it's not going to get adjudicated until 2025. You're not to deny it because it was filed prior to the effective date. Does that mean you hold it for the next 3 years? Does that mean you grant it? I don't, I don't know. And I don't like not knowing. Carol can probably tell you that, but but I don't know. So if his words hold true that they're going to start enacting these right away, then that would be just so much better for everybody. And because I could see a ton of frustration if you got to wait 2 or 3 years. The cancer is not going to wait. Yeah.
In fact, we don't recommend that anybody wait. Anybody who feels that they're covered under this should file immediately for everything they're entitled to. Just because this law says when it goes into effect, that doesn't mean that's going to happen. With the VA, you never know what's going to happen. And I always recommend you file earlier rather than later. And, what President Biden said was really unique. I've never known a president to do that before. And that's why we're not sure what's going to happen. We've never had a president who said, I want this to start now. What's the effect of that? We don't really know, but he's telling his secretary to do that. So we have a very strong feeling that that's going to happen. But like we said, we don't know. But the most important thing for you to do is to file right away. And the other thing, Carrie, is I don't want you to feel frustrated if you already have any of these claims pending. All the claims that we have like this, we're continuing to process, and we intend to win them and get the past due benefits. We don't look at this as precluding you from getting benefits that we have been claiming for right now. Isn't that how you feel, Carrie?
Oh, absolutely. We've got plenty of cases that we've been fighting for unfortunately, for years.
Yes.
And if we have to develop that case, or already have, to get a medical opinion and win that case, we're going forward on those cases as if this act didn't exist or doesn't exist, because this act is not going to get you those benefits retrospectively, if your claim's been pending for 5 years.
Exactly. That's the thing that you need to know. Unfortunately, while this law is great in many ways, it doesn't give you retroactive benefits. And that's why anyone who has a claim should continue that. We have been winning these claims. So these are claims you can win. You should start them immediately. And if you have them, don't drop them. Keep them going. Carrie, anything else you wanted to say about that? Carrie? May have lost you. Okay. Efrain, do we have any questions that relate just to the burn pit, so we can answer those first? And remember, the thing I would tell you is,
did I freeze on you there? I thought you froze on me.
Lost you.
Sorry.
I was saying not to drop any claims, and if they have a claim, to pursue them. Anything you would add to that?
Well, I don't know what you heard me say before I fairly froze, but absolutely, file. We're going to keep fighting these claims as if this law doesn't exist, because what I was saying is, if your claim's been pending for 5 years, this law is not going to cause it to go back 5 years. We want you to get the same effective date as when you first filed the claim, as long as we've been fighting the claim. So we're going to keep doing that. this is going to make a big difference down the road. One could say for future benefits. It's not going to help those vets that's been fighting for years and years and years. And we still want you to get those benefits all the way back, that as far as we can help you get them. So does that answer your question, Carol?
Yes.
I don't know why I cut out there.
Yes. Okay, well, let's take some questions that we have. We have Parsons Bradley. If I do a higher level review for my PTSD, will that jeopardize the other part of my claim, which in this case is my favorable back claim? No, because you are not first of all, remember, if you're not permanent and total, nothing's forever. So you could have a back claim rated at whatever, and they could have put in there for it to be reviewed. So whether you file an appeal or not, it's going to be reviewed. So you can't, that's the first thing you should know. But normally filing, if you have you've been denied PTSD, but you've been granted your back, you don't appeal the back, then usually they will not look at that. They will only look at the PTSD claim. So no, I don't think that should affect it at all. Let's see if any of these relate to burn pits, so we can at least. This one, I'm not sure anything about the BVA speeding up the process. I have heard nothing, Carrie. Have you? They're still working the legacy before they get to the new AMA programs, unless the AMA person meets the criteria for expedite. But I have not heard of anything happening. Have you, Carrie?
No, the BVA and I are not getting along. That raises a very good question, because I remember a question not too long ago about somebody being upset because we said the BVA was a black hole of claims, and then they're filing it up at BVA. It's not a black hole of claims. It's although it seems like it. And sometimes we still have to go there to win the claim. In fact, in a majority of our cases, we have to go there to win the claim. So don't think that your case is at the board. Oh, it's toast. We've got a lot of problems with the board right now, but it's still no option on many cases to go there in order to win the case.
Many times you don't have an option. You've got to go to the board to win the case. And Carrie, I've noticed that I'm getting a significantly increased number of decisions from the board lately.
I've heard that just about the past month or so.
Yes.
I don't know that I've actually seen that myself, but I haven't seen it slow down either. But I think the tail is in the tape. We'll find out soon. I hope that's true, because they haven't been operating up to capacity, in my opinion. Of course, they'll tell you it's because they've got a lot of new hires and they got to train them. I don't know that that's the case, because I've heard that too many times. To me, it seems like a ship without a rudder at the moment. And sure enough, they don't have a chairman at the moment. So I hope somebody is steering the ship in the right direction there.
Now, I think the last head of the BVA was blamed for the backlog. And in all honesty, I don't think it was her fault. I mean, I think when they set this whole AMA thing up, everybody knew she was going to fail, because they were giving they thought everybody would go higher level review and not the BVA. And so they put all their funding into higher level review, and that's not where everybody went, because they were getting denied there. Yeah. So I think all these cases were dumped to the BVA, and they didn't have the ability to handle them.
Well, I'm sure I'm on record in lots of places saying, and I don't mind saying it now, I think the AMA is the worst law that's ever been passed on veterans. Hands down. I don't think anything else compares. And when they wrote this thing, the board wrote it. They were a little self-serving. They wrote it for themselves, thinking their life was going to be much easier. I mean, it was not hard to read between the lines. And one thing they forgot about, both in its construction and in its implementation, and this kills VA central office every time they do something big like this, is they forgot about the field. And they forgot what the field was going to do. Right. And what the field did was, oh, we can appeal directly to the board now? Well, let's do it.
Right. The field gave us knowing I'm not going to get a favorable at the regional office. So why waste my time?
Right. Now I do think some organizations are hurting that process by asking for hearings on practically everything. This is just my opinion.
Yes.
I don't mean to get off topic. But yeah, a lot could be improved in that whole process by people stepping back a little bit, maybe swallowing some pride and going, maybe we took this down the wrong path. Let's see how we can fix it. But I don't see that happening just yet.
Right.
That's a fight for another day, I'm sure.
One thing I'd like to say is we are telling you what we do now. A year ago, I may have and probably did do things differently. A year ago or 2 years ago, I was putting everything in the BVA because I didn't know they were going to say, okay, we're only going to do legacy and we're not going to do AMA, because they were denying all of the higher level reviews. Then when we realized that's what they were doing, that they were going to do only legacy cases, then we started going back and trying all sorts of different things with a higher level review to see if we could get any favorable decisions from them. And from our office, all of us talking with each other, we definitely found some areas that we thought were working for us. Mm-hmm. But this is not something that because I went to the BVA on one case, I now would go to the BVA on the same case. You have to look at what the BVA and what the VA is doing right now. And we got a question here about why is the VA showing that my case isn't moving? I'm still 100. It looks like only 2 cases were moved. All of those statistics they give you, I don't know where they get them from, but they change all the time. And I've never found them to be really accurate. So I'm sorry, but I don't think you can rely on those. And the other thing I want to say is we have access to our VBMS, our site on the VA, and you have a different access. And what you see is totally different from what we see. And from what a lot of my veterans tell me, what you see sometimes is just totally inaccurate. They will say you don't have claims when you do have claims. So I'm just telling you, don't get upset about what you see, because as of today, they're trying really hard to have you know what's going on with your case. But as to today, I don't see that as very accurate. Okay, Carrie, we have a bunch of questions.
All righty.
First of all, remember what we said. If you've got a claim for burn pit, any of these, file them now. Bamboo Pondifi. I was denied sleep apnea secondary to orthopedic service-connected disabilities with obesity as an intermediate step. The rater said it was because of overeating. Should I go supplemental with an IMO rebutting their claim or just higher level review? What do you think, Carrie?
Well, first, if somebody can ask a question in that manner, you're already ahead of the game.
Yes.
Because I think it was asked pretty well, although I might need to hear part of it again to answer it. So why was it denied again? It was just, we're talking sleep apnea was denied secondary to ortho conditions. Is that right?
Yes. And it was for overeating.
And so the rater denied the case by saying it was due to overeating as opposed to weight gain from the ortho. Right now.
Oh, where was it? Efrain, can you find that for me?
Okay. All right. So, okay. Thank you, Efrain. I appreciate that. If you've got the ability to get an IMO, I mean, personally, I think I would go that route. Because at HLR, if you do have a negative medical opinion there, regardless of why, if the rater said you were overeating or if the examiner said you were overeating, you go to the HLR, you cannot introduce new evidence. So once you get there, you may have to end up going with a supplemental claim afterwards anyway, if it doesn't get you anywhere, or going to the board without an IMO. I would get the IMO. I would also find out, I'm getting a little bit in the weeds here, but if the rater actually said it's because of overeating and the claim is based on ortho conditions, causing weight gain because of inactivity that led to the sleep apnea. One, that's a valid theory of the claim. I would go with that. Okay, I've argued those same types of things myself. But if the rater said, "Oh, it's because you were overeating," all right, that's what we call a big old Colvin violation. Because that's a medical conclusion, really, or just a unsubstantiated personal opinion. But in reality, that's a medical conclusion that doesn't have any support behind it. Okay, and the rater, as a layman, just like you and I as a layman, they can't make those kind of statements. At least they won't hold up on appeal. So keep that in mind if you have to go to the board with it, because that's kind of what you want to argue. You could get that shot down, I think, rather easily. But if you can get the IMO, I say go with the IMO, because that's if the rater said that, they're way out of line.
And Carrie, that makes me think that you did not get a compensation and pension exam for this question, because if he's saying that, he should be quoting the examiner who examined you, but it doesn't sound like he's doing that. So if he didn't do that, that's a failure of the duty to assist to give you a compensation and pension exam. So if you want to go higher level review, that's what I would argue there if they didn't give you one. But I think what Carrie says, you could either go higher level review if they didn't give you an exam, and then if they again don't do it right, get an IMO, or you could get an IMO right away. The problem is, you get an IMO, they're definitely going to give you a compensation and pension exam.
Right.
Uh-huh. Okay, we just got to follow up on that question. So you did have a CMP exam. So I'm with you, Carrie. I would definitely I'd file an appeal, a supplemental appeal, and get an IMO and get that doctor to contradict the report from the compensation and pension examiner. And
I want to add something to that. Where are they getting the fact that it's just overeating? Okay, so I'm reading between the lines here. I don't know what the case says. I don't know if you told your doctor you have a habit of overeating, or if they're just assuming that's the problem. But I could very easily see physicians thinking that is the problem. You gain too much weight, maybe it's because you're eating too much. I mean, sure, that's a natural assumption that someone's going to make. But if they are not aware of one, that you can use obesity secondary to service connecting conditions to link another condition. All right, that's important for them to know. Two, is there evidence of overeating? In other words, could you write a lay statement to say, look, I realize my back and my knees and whatever caused me not to be able to exercise, so I take that into consideration and purposely do not overeat. These are assumptions on their part. I would make that, you can do that in a lay statement, okay? Because if there's no premise in the record for the notion that it's caused from overeating, if there's no foundation to support. Now, if you told a bunch of people, hey, I have a habit of overeating, that's going to hurt you. But if you haven't, then their statements are out of line and there's no support in the record for it. And you can argue that away. And I would do those lay statements, and then, like Carol said, get the IMO, make sure the IMO discusses the lay statements and how they're just drawing assumptions there. So that can be one, in my opinion.
And as Matt said, I've never seen a claim I don't like, but if you have orthopedic problems, that means pain, that means limitation in doing the activities of daily living, of things you love to do, which to me often means anxiety, depression. So if you have those, file service connection for that. And then you can also file for secondary service connection OSA next to, because of the mental problems. So don't not file claims that you really should be filing and really have, because you never know what the VA is going to do. We get a lot of claims approved for sleep apnea secondary to mental conditions, and the VA is very quick to approve mental conditions secondary to orthopedic, because they are aware of the pain and how that limits activity and things that the way that you want to live your life. So make sure you're filing for all the claims you have in there. let's see. Court case was 2020. This is John Johnson. Hi, Mr. Johnson. I'm not sure whether you mean the BVA or the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. But as we've just said, BVA is backed up. You clearly, well, you could have a legacy case because they certainly aren't at 2020 in the legacy cases either. So unfortunately, that's where they are. If you happen to be 75 or older, have a terminal illness, have extreme financial situation, are homeless, Purple Heart, then you should let the court or the BVA know that so that they can expedite your case. Or if you have any, for instance, sometimes I represent younger people who are being cared by the elderly parents. To me, that's a reason for expedite. And in almost all cases, I've got it expedited. DJ Rock, my TDIU for 60%, IBDS 50%, and 50% MDD, major depressive disorder, is protected, but my major depressive disorder increased to 70%. If it increases, won't be 4 more months. Should I wait to file new claims until my 70% is protected? Or is the 20-year TDIU considered a protected 100%? Carrie, I'm having trouble making sure I really understand this. Carrie, do you understand it?
I'm trying to find the question you were reading. You said it was John Johnson.
It's DJ Rock.
Oh,
it's orange on the left. It says DJ. First of all, remember, if you've had TDIU for almost 20 years, I don't think you have to worry about them decreasing anything, even though it's supposed to be 20 years. I would go ahead and, if I were you, and file for an increased rating. But what are you filing it for? Are you filing it so you can get SMCS? That would be my second question. Once you get 100%, remember you're only going to get, because it looks like you are at TDIU, so you're only going to get more if you fit an SMCS or any of the other SMCs. So I would assume 70%, and then you'd ask for TDIU because of the mental, and then use the 60% for your back for the SMCS. So that's my second question. What exactly are you trying to do? Carrie, what do you think?
Yeah, and looking at the question, my answer really would be stop, don't file any claims. And I say that because it looks like you're not, unless I'm wrong here, it looks like you're not getting TDIU on a single disability. It looks like, because you talk about intervertebral disc syndrome and major depression. I mean, right there's 2 disabilities. So if that's the case, it doesn't sound like you're getting TDIU on a single disability. So on that notion, I'm assuming you're trying to get SMCS, like Carol said. If you don't have a single 100% rating and a separate 60% rating, you're not going to get SMCS. So if you're TDIU, which can count as a single 100% rating, as long as it's based on a single disability, but if it's not, you file an increase, you're probably going to be left right where you are. Because if you're not getting 100% based on a single disability and you add more to that, you're still not going to be getting 100% based on a single disability. And if you don't get that, you're not going to get SMCS. Either way, if you're only 4 to 6 months from a protected TDIU rating, if I'm reading that right, 4 to 6 months is not a long time to wait for a 20-year protection. Okay, you waited 20 years, wait 4 more months or whatever it may be. Because one thing most people don't realize, when you're TDIU and it's protected after 20 years, that means it's protected like any other condition. So if you went back to work, right, you're still protected with your TDIU at 20 years. Most people don't realize.
I didn't know that, Carrie.
That's true.
You went back to work, you could still get the 100%?
Right. And there's case law on that. There's case law on that. But I would not put that at risk if you're somewhere close to that 20%, I would make sure, or that 20-year period, I would make sure you go beyond that 20-year period.
Okay, I changed my mind and I agree with you.
And that's because the law that talks about that gives two exceptions, and that's those exceptions don't include that scenario, and the law is rather clear. That you don't have, if you've got it for 20 years, either you got it through fraud or you never had the requisite service in the first place. If it's anything else, it's protected. But if it was through fraud or you never had the requisite service, then it's not protected. And the courts have looked at that and said, well, that doesn't fit into either one of these two categories. Therefore, it's protected.
I learned something new today. I'm loving that. All right. Please, I'm told to please click like and subscribe so that you can continue to receive those. We would really appreciate it if you did that. This is Traveling Terry. Can you use, and I don't know the answer to this, although I guess it's right. Can you use Access VA Quick Submit to submit a Foia request? Do you know, Carrie?
That's a very good question. I mean, off the cuff, I would say yes, because my understanding is you can use that to submit a claim. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're, and I'm assuming the FOIA request is like for a copy of your claims file or something. I would think so.
I would too.
I have not heard that you can't do that. And so, yeah, I would give it a shot. I may not rely only on that. I probably would fax it to the EIC just in case.
Yes.
I mean, it's easy enough to do. Yeah, I would do both.
Okay, Law Dog 01. Did I miss Iraq on the list? Yes, you did. Iraq is covered. Let's see. Tom Dix, when they mentioned Japan, they also put a 10-year limit. I don't understand that. Do you know what he's talking about?
Etsugi, Japan, it is not in the Pact Act.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's not. Etsugi, Japan, the only thing what I know about Etsugi, Japan, because it was in training letter 10-01 that I wrote 12 years ago, that they had a big incinerator on the base that produced some toxins. The problem with it is, and I actually didn't want to put that in the training letter back then, but it was an issue for whatever reason back then, sort of in the press and that type of stuff. But here we are talking about burn pits and hammering DOD because they didn't use incinerators like they should have, like they were paid to do. And then you had an incinerator being used at Sugi. It was kind of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But there was an incinerator at Japan, but I'm not sure what a 10-year limit. I'm not sure what they're referring to there. There was a 10-year limit with sinusitis and rhinitis when VA wrote the regulation, adding that as a presumption. And I think there's another question on here about that. The Pact Act, my understanding, does remove that 10-year limit because if VA wrote a regulation and that same thing that they wrote a regulation for is now covered in statute, the statute supersedes the regulation. It's just the way the law basically works there. And so you would revert back to the statute. If the statute does not provide a 10-year limit, the regulation can no longer provide a 10-year limit because you cannot narrow the intent of Congress. You can expand it, but you cannot narrow it, not in veterans law. Does that make sense? I might have went too far with that answer.
It does. If it doesn't, ask us a question farther down. Yeah. Philip Sage, hi guys. How long does it usually take to get your advanced on the docket approved? I've had mine in since June 20. You need to resubmit it. One of the problems that I've had, and Carrie, I don't know if you found it, it's sometimes they seem to get lost. So right. I always put on the top in all caps, really big, darkened, boldened, and underlined, motion to advance on the docket. And then if I can, I'll put 75 or older, terminal illness, whatever it is, homeless, that qualifies you for. Because if that's old, I would say that got lost.
I've had that problem, Carol, especially when using the board's fax number.
Yes.
As opposed to, and maybe quick submit is the way to do it now. But I remember when you could submit stuff. Trying to think of the program, Carol, you might know that we just had it. I think just quick submit overtook it or whatever. Direct upload or anyway, that you could submit it through fax, the board's number, and you can submit it through this other, I guess, more efficient electronic channel, and they would see one and not the other.
Exactly.
And I've had to chase them down on a number of motions to expedite because we submitted it through proper channels through the board's fax number. And for whatever reason, and I think this is a leadership issue at the board, nobody's monitoring that fax, and it just didn't get noticed.
This is a big problem that's ongoing, and all of us have had that. So I would submit it. If you don't hear anything in 3 months, I would resubmit it again and say, this is my third request. Let's see where we are. I got COPD. How can I file if not in my record? This is one where we would use witness statements. Go ahead and file, and then someone who knew you before and after service would say you had no problems before, you had problems afterwards, and you would talk about how it developed in service or when exactly it developed, and you would talk about where you were and why you thought you were exposed to it. Anything you'd add to that, Carrie?
Well, it's just it doesn't give much context to the question. I got COPD, and how can I file if not in my record? If you're referring to the Pact Act, and I don't know that you are, well, the Pact Act does count COPD now as a presumptive if you served
right
in the Gulf, basically after 1994. So it doesn't have to be in your claims file, but if you know you have COPD, I'm assuming a doctor has diagnosed it at some point, or else I would ask, how do you know you have it? So take that record, whatever it is saying you have it, file the claim under the Pact Act, show that you were in Iraq or Afghanistan or any of the other locations that's pertinent to the Gulf, and that should help you get the presumption of service connection for that.
Right. When I read it, I was thinking he was not in those areas. If you were in those areas, this is easy. It's just like Carrie said. You just have to have your diagnosis and where you were and file your claim.
Yeah. And if you weren't, if you were just stateside or in a different era of service, my question would be: what is it you think caused the COPD? Because you're going to have to come up with something in service that caused it.
Right.
And it's not enough to the question to ask to answer.
It could be that you were exposed to asbestos. It could be that you had terrible lung problems while you were in. Like Carrie said, it's kind of hard. We don't really know everything that you're asking us. Calvin Perkins, trying to get both shoulders service connected. There's no document saying I was hurt in the Army. I was artillery infantry. I think, Carrie, this is once again one of those that you could only rely on witness statements if you don't have any other treatment, no military service treatment records, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, trying to get both shoulders service connected. There's no documents that they were hurt in the Army. All right, you kind of said that yourself. So what is the theory? Were they hurt in the Army and it just didn't? You didn't go to the doctor, or were they hurt and they lost the records? You got to come up with some form of in-service event. It cannot be just that you have shoulder problems now and they're not documented as shoulder problems in the service. They either have to be documented that you had problems in the service, you had to have some kind of event there that you can point back to. That event doesn't always have to be documented, obviously. The thing is, can you substantiate it now?
Right.
So you need something there. And if you can get some form of in-service event, that's a start. And, you've got the diagnosis now, that's a start. And then you're just looking for a medical link between the two.
Right. Proverbs House. I have a cousin who got out in 2001 and served in the areas mentioned, but didn't file a claim till 2013. Is he not eligible for this? I think you're talking about burn pits. Carrie, wouldn't you think that's what he's talking about?
But then,
I don't really know.
Proverbs House, I know. First, I will say my email is Carrie at hillandponton.com. Carrie, Kerry at hillandponton.com. Send me an email. I know you've been trying to reach me. I'm just I'm stretched a little thin. I apologize. That's all I can do. All right. So no, just because you filed in 2013, that doesn't mean, there's the time limits of, people ask kind of questions like all the time. I served here. I didn't file till this date. And does that leave me out of luck? No, it doesn't. When you file, as opposed to when you served, is not a dispositive factor in the claim. You can still win those. It just depends on what are the rest of the facts in the case, because I don't see anything else added to that question that tells me, what the disability is, where did they serve? I'm assuming maybe in the Gulf, maybe not. So not enough there to answer the question, except to say, no, the fact that he didn't file the claim until 2013, that does not in no way, shape, or form mean you can't get benefits.
Okay. Audrey Wilder, thank you all. Got evaluation regarding vocational rehabilitation. It stated I was unemployable. I filed this evidence. How long does it take to hear something? Okay. Remember, you filed the evidence. You have to have a pending claim as well. So don't make sure you filed a claim for unemployability. Just because you filed the evidence doesn't create a claim. And that's one thing, Carrie, that drives me crazy about this AMA. Mm-hmm. People will send something in like that. And then from the VA, they get, we see you tried to file a claim. You filed the wrong form. Please file the right form. And no one knows what the right form is.
Right.
So when you get that, there are two forms. That's the 526 for a new claim or an 0995 for a supplemental claim. File them both. Send them in there and say, okay, now. Because if you file one, they're likely to say, no, we want the other one. So please make sure you file those claims. They have to be pending. If you filed them and they were denied, then there's no pending claim, even though you put this evidence in. Now, if you put it in within a year of denial, it should reopen it. But you don't want to wait around for them to figure that out. You want to go ahead and file either a supplemental claim or a 526 with that documentation.
And also on the AMA, if you file the claim, they decided that and say you requested an HLR, then you're waiting on that. And you come in and file those records. They're not going to consider those records in an HLR because the record's closed after the decision. Just another perk we all got to deal with in this AMA. So yeah, figuring out the AMA is that's a challenge.
I had, and it broke my heart. I have this client now, but for 3 years, he kept filing letters. I want to file a claim for whatever. And he kept getting the letters back from the VA. We see you want to file a claim, but you filed the wrong, you haven't filed the right form. Please file the right form. He could not figure out what the right form. So 3 years went by of benefits he's lost. So file an 0995, file a 526, and move the claim. Don't let them do this to you.
And if I could add, if you've been doing things in the Pact Act for a bit, because it's now been out there for a bit, and you've gotten a letter saying something to the effect of, we received evidence, you would like to file a claim. It might say what the disability is, it might not. The law now requires you to file a claim on one of these forms. And it's like a short, at least the cover page is a short one pager, so to speak.
Right.
You may have a problem. What they probably did, and because this is everywhere in VBA right now, and has been since they've enacted the AMA. We're not talking about the Pact Act at the moment. And that is they've looked at your claim and decided you didn't do it on the right form, so they just canceled it. And that letter is then telling you they canceled it without actually telling you they canceled it. All right. So I know for a fact there's a lot of people out there that think they have claims pending that do not.
Right. And that's what my client thought.
Right. And who that's going to hurt are the people that don't have representation or maybe have it with the BSO because they're not telling these things to people. All right. And tracking that down and getting VA to fix it, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be hard to do. It's proving above the heads of a lot of people, including VA employees, and you might need to seek some serious juice, so to speak, to get that resolved. It's a bad problem, and I think it's going to be a bad problem for quite some time.
This is what we're talking about. The AMA is a horrible law. It's, the law is supposed to be vet friendly. This isn't friendly to anybody. Oh. Carrie, I spend sometimes 20% of my day writing back when they say you filed the wrong form or you didn't file the form, and said, yes, I did. And this is why the form is correct. And please process it.
Yeah.
But, so the VA doesn't know themselves what they're doing in many, many cases.
Yeah. And very good.
If I didn't respond, the case would be dead.
Right. And so that's an excellent point. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes you file the wrong form.
Right.
I've done it. Especially when the AMA was first out, because nobody could figure out what the right form was.
Exactly.
It changed to where you can do everything on one form, depending on if you're filing a reopen claim, a claim for increase, and an original service connection claim. You might need 3 forms. That's ridiculous. Yes. I'm sorry. I don't mean to get excited, but it's very ridiculous. And so you might have done the wrong form, okay, and you need to do the right one. But in the vast majority of those letters that I've seen, it was the VA that was wrong.
Exactly. And but you know what, Carrie? Sometimes they're not going to change their mind. So sometimes I just give them, if I gave them a 526 and it says the wrong one, I give them an 0995 because I want my case processed. And you don't want your sitting there and thinking it's being processed. Yeah.
And it's going to affect your effective date in a lot of those situations.
Yes.
Okay. And that's what I'm saying. You might need some serious help, someone that knows this business and knows how to attack that stuff, because
they're telling you have 60 days to respond or your case dies. Yeah, I think these are going to be cases that in the future, those of us like you and I go in and find this was a mistake.
Absolutely.
But like you said, right. It's gotten so complex. You often need people to help you. Joe Franklin, thank you.
Go ahead.
Joe Franklin, thank you, Hilly Pond, and Mr. Carey for keeping us updated on the Pact Act. You're welcome. Don Tufts, if I file for insomnia and PTSD, will they take the higher of the 2 ratings? They will probably, is insomnia related to something other than your PTSD? If insomnia is related to, I'm not sure what, but they could be, but usually they are put together, aren't they, Carrie?
Yeah, there's no, I'm fairly certain in saying there's no diagnostic code for insomnia, at least one that you're going to get an independent rating on. And so it's normally going to be a component of a mental health issue. There are some exceptions, but you're kind of threading the needle there. As to how to use insomnia in some other cases to maybe help you get an increased rating. Typically, when it's with mental health, it's going to be considered as part of the mental health rating.
Unless it's sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm, right.
John Price, burn pit legislation in the language of new theater of operations. It puts Turkey, Israel, and Egypt. Is this true? Yes. Mike Downing, I've been waiting 7 years for a decision on my claim that was started in 2015, during which time it has been remanded 4 times. Unfortunately, that's not rare. What you need to make sure that you're doing is you have the evidence. When your case was remanded, it was to give you a chance to prove to them that you're entitled to these benefits. And therefore, there's specific things they're looking for. And if you haven't given that to them, when it goes back, you're not going to win. So make sure you know what it is they want and you've given that to them. And if you need help, call us, call anybody, because after 4 times, they're giving you a chance. You need to make sure you take advantage of that. Anything you'd say, Carrie?
Not really. No, I just, on the case, I don't think I have anything to add, but I would say in general, the people that win, the ones that don't give up.
Yes.
If you've got 4 remands, they would have denied it by now if they thought they could probably get away with it. So don't give up.
Don't give up.
No, under no circumstances. And if you get a denial by the board with that many remands, go to court.
Exactly. Dominic Simpson, I just went through my CMP exam and I claimed rhinitis and sinusitis. I told my examiner I was exposed to burn pits. When my compensation comes back, will VA look at disability ratings for my conditions?
Yes, they will.
Yes, they should. Don't you think so, Carrie?
Yeah, did it say, or does they have to get evidence themselves or something? I saw a question that said that, but yeah, you should not have to get that evidence yourself. Yeah, they should give you exams and rate the case accordingly. Yeah.
Joe Smith, I wish they had included Bosnia and Kosovo as part of this. I do too. There are a lot of things, Okinawa, the Philippines, there are a lot of things we wish they had included, Korea, but they didn't. But at least they have done something magnificent with this. Railroad Retired, thanks for everything you guys are doing for me. You're welcome. Thanks for your service. James Josie, thanks for your help. You're welcome. Mark Bogle, I'm rated 0 for alopecia. I said that wrong because it is no longer present. So when should I go for a higher rating? Or should I pes planus? I had before services gotten worse. So they rate the alopecia, I'm not sure you say it, based on what part of your body it covers. So you want to go there when your body has the problem that it normally has to get a rating. Pes planus is something different, and definitely you should, I had before serving has gotten worse. Yes, you want to ask for pes planus as aggravated by service. And here it is again, Bamboo Pandolfi. Yeah, the rater said obesity was due to overeating, not for lack of physical activity because of service-connected disabilities. I'm with Carrie. This is a Colvin violation. You definitely need to appeal that. What do you think, Carrie? Anything you'd add?
Yeah, appeal it. You may, if you don't have somebody that, you might need help appealing that. It just depends on how studious you are with all of this, but I would not take that. I would appeal it without a doubt.
Okay. Antoine Lewis, the VA stated my sleep apnea, migraine, and lower back were connected for my recent higher level review, but they did not rate me. How is that possible? I have no idea. Carrie, do you?
It's
Antoine Lewis. Right under Gun Guy says hello. ANTWA Lewis.
I know, I just saw it.
The VA stated my sleep apnea, migraine, and lower back were connected for my recent higher level review, but they did not rate me.
All right, reading between the lines here, I'm guessing when I see a question like that, it's usually because they granted service connection at 0%.
That would be my guess.
And if that's the case, you appeal the rating. Okay. Migraines can be 0, low back can be 0. It shouldn't be. And sleep apnea can be too, but it shouldn't be either. Otherwise, I would look at that decision and find out, all right, what did they do here? Did they really service connect it and just rate you 0 for all that, or is it a misunderstanding? But that would be my guess, not knowing.
If you're using a CPAP machine, that's a 50% rating.
Yeah.
If you're not using anything, that's 0. With the migraines, you should send in a letter about how they affected you. And remember to get that DBQ on migraines. And Ephraim, if you could put that up for them to download. There are a lot of questions on there that you ought to put in your letter to them about how migraines affect you. But the most important ones are you have at least once a month, and the question prostrating means to lie down, whether that's in a chair or in a bed, that the headaches are so bad you have to lie down. They're called prostrating. That gives you a 50% rating. And if they interfere with your ability to work, that's economic interference because of inability to concentrate, need to be in a dark room. That's your 50% rating. So if you have those 3 things, those are the 3 key questions. There are a lot of questions on there, but the 3 key questions are those. So if you have that, make sure they know that. And the lower back, you're going to get that rated depending on the range of motion, radiculopathy, things like that. So first of all, I think you definitely need to get somebody to help you, because I don't really know why you got a 0 on everything. And if you did, good news, you're service connected. Bad news, you really need to get some better evidence there to get all those ratings up. Dennis Pitcher filed for chronic rhinitis and sinusitis as soon as I was diagnosed 7 days after the law. Will they give me an exam to do my rating, or will I have to get that evidence myself? Carrie?
Yeah, they should. I think that was the question I saw earlier. Yeah, they'll give you an exam. They should.
Right.
If they don't, I would, appeal it for sure. But yeah, they should.
Okay, and back once again, Bamboo Pandolfi. Sorry, the doctor in the ACCMP said because of overeating, so just like we thought. Opsicon, first Gulf War vet here in May 2022, had an exam at the VA. The doctor listed 13 items that was Gulf War related and stated it was diagnosed with those 13 issues with the lab's other tests. I don't see a question with that. If you can find one farther down the frame. What are the most successful claims that hypertension is secondary to? Carrie?
That hypertension is secondary to?
I would think it's that hypertension causes, wouldn't you?
That would be my initial, yeah.
So hypertension heart disease secondary to hypertension.
Yeah, unless you're trying to get service connection for hypertension. I guess it depends on how you're asking the question.
Yeah.
But herbicides are linked to hypertension. There's lots of stuff in burn.
Diabetes.
That is kidney problems. I don't know. It's hard to answer a question like that. But if it's the other way around, what's linked to hypertension? What's not? I mean, heart attack, stroke, peripheral vascular disease, aneurysm. Kidney failure. Depending on the severity of the hypertension, it can get pretty bad.
So I would Google causes of hypertension just to see if you have any of those. If you're trying to get the service connection for the hypertension, sleep apnea, I think, can cause it. I mean, there are a lot of things.
That's a good point. Sleep apnea is your heart works harder, and you can get high blood pressure spikes while you're undergoing an apnea episode. So yeah, that's a good one.
The Obsicom first Gulf War vet, his question follows. He said, I'm a Gulf War vet here, and in May 2020 had an exam, and the doctor listed 13 items Gulf War related. And then down he says, am I eligible to have claim since it's been 30 years? Carrie?
Yes, you are. The Gulf War window is open. And basically what that means is when laws have changed throughout time with Gulf War issues, what's changed the most, if you're looking at any one particular thing that's changed the most, is they kept setting out the delimiting date. In other words, when the law was first passed, Gulf War was over. It said, well, anybody served from August 2nd, 1990 up until, and they would give a date in the future. And that's where it would all count. Okay. And then we went into Iraq, and it kind of extended the Gulf War, and it extended all those dates. I don't even know that there is a delimiting date. In other words, a date now where you're no longer eligible for benefits under the Gulf War rules. So yeah, there's no matter if it's 30 years, file your claims. If they deny them, appeal them. They shouldn't be denying them because it's been so long.
Okay, it's that time. If you're service connected for erectile dysfunction, and then it goes down here to diabetes, shouldn't that be paid SMC for loss of use? Carrie? So he's service connected for ED. Remember, if you get service connected for ED, erectile dysfunction, usually the rating is 0%, and you get the money through SMCK, which is around $136 a month. So yes, you should be paid for that. But remember, it should be paying you under the SMC, and the rating would be 0.
Correct. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Michael, what should I do with 2 negative CMP exams for my back condition claim that argue lack of chronicity on both? So what he means by that is they're saying the examiners at the CMP exam said he had problems in the service, but they stopped. And it was only later that it started again. So there was no ongoing problem with his back. And I think that you need to do, once again, with witness statements. If you have medical records, which unfortunately most people don't do all the way back, that would be even better. Once I was able to get a chiropractor who had treated this veteran for like 20 years, and he remembered him. So we were able to use that. But otherwise, you're pretty much left with witness statements of people who knew you after service. It said right after service, your back was killing you and you continue to have problems. And given examples, couldn't play golf, couldn't play football, had trouble working, all of those things.
If I could add one thing to that.
Absolutely.
Very, very important. It's chronicity of symptoms.
That's right.
Not chronicity of treatment, or continuity, as I would say. It's continuity of symptoms, not continuity of treatment. You see that all the time. A doctor will say, well, there's no continuity of treatment, therefore the opinion is negative, and however they want to justify it. As soon as they do that, it's an inadequate medical opinion, an inadequate exam, because the standard, if you will, in the law does not say continuity of treatment. It's continuity of symptoms. And so those you can fill that gap in with, just like Carol said, lay statements and things like that, and your own lay statement. So that's very, very important.
Bamboo, thank you guys. You're the best. I appreciate everything you do for us. We love doing this. And once again, thank you for your service. Matthew Pagwin, my VSO has put me in for a presumptive medical condition for lymphoma 2+B because of the Pact Act. I did not submit a Nexus letter. Does this hurt my case? No, I don't think it does. Do you, Carrie?
No, not in accordance with the Pact Act.
No, that's supposed to be the benefit of the Pact Act. You don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. Hobby, supplemental claim question. I filed new medical records within the 1-year window. If awarded, will I get back pay to the original file date? Carrie?
I filed new medical records.
Within the 1-year window.
Well, it sort of depends. If you got a decision, then you file new records. I'm assuming you got a claim in there too. Because if you just file the records, it might not get you anywhere. But yeah, if those records are technically new and relevant evidence that's pertinent to the decision that was denied within that last year, VA is supposed to re-adjudicate that case. I would not count on them to do that. I would make sure the claim is in place. If you get the benefits and they jack up the effective date, then I would make that argument that you had records within a year that kept that claim open, and you should get the original effective date.
So what Carrie's saying is the VA works off of forms, and if you don't file the specific form they want, you don't have a claim. They don't see it somehow. So you really need to always have a claim pending for whatever it is you're claiming. So in this case, it would be a supplemental claim. And like you said, if they agree but grant you benefits as of the date of the supplemental claim, then you have a perfect higher level review appeal because they failed to go back for an earlier effective date. And that is one area where the higher level review has been very beneficial, that they often will give that. Michael LeMay, I got denied sleep apnea secondary to PTSD and was told by QTC that I didn't need to attend one. I had a sleep study Nexus and 2 buddy statements. I filed for higher level review. Will it get overturned? Probably not. What do you think, Carrie? I think he's going to have to go to the board. Probably
first, but I would never, I don't care how nice they are, and do not take advice from these CMP examiners.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. I mean, there are some good ones out there that mean well, but you don't know who they are just because they're nice to you. I don't know how many times I've had a client say, my exam went great. You know, nice. They told me I was going to get the benefit. turn right around and issue a negative medical opinion.
Yep.
Right? Just don't take their advice. That would be my best advice on that topic.
All right. RSM. I've been diagnosed by my pulmonologist with hyperactive bronchial system. Would that qualify as asthma? He put me on corticosteroid inhaler for a few weeks and a bronchodilator as needed. I would certainly file for that. Wouldn't you, Carrie?
Yeah, and of course with the Pact Act, you're not limited to asthma any longer. There's a whole list of things that could very well fall under. So yeah, absolutely.
Philip Sage, they said the same thing about my sleep apnea. I overeat, ignoring my knees, back, migraine, major depression. The tater wasn't even an expert. He was a physiologist. Helen Ponton had the experts. You're going to need a good nexus statement to connect these things. Sleep apnea, unless it's clearly something that started in the service, is really difficult to win at the regional office. Don't you find that, Carrie? The board is where we get.
Absolutely. I've said this in front of the board and the court in various conventions. Why is it that you've got QTC and LHI and VES, all these, which they're all contract examiners, all different businesses, operate north, south, east, and west in the middle of the country. And the one thing they're very good at is issuing medical opinions on sleep apnea that all look like they took the same training from the same person.
Exactly. And they did.
Right. I'm sure they did. They're trained to deny these things. I don't care what VA says. No one gets that consistent in this business without that. Right. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, you're going to have to fight these. They also, but they do you some favors. They make some pretty unsupported assertions in their medical opinions. They rely on cause and effect test in their medical opinions, which you can definitely get shot down on appeal to the board. So you've got some ammunition behind you, and the research is behind you. It is what it is when at the local level. If you know how to argue this and seek those opinions, you can win those issues.
Yeah, go where you can win them.
Mm-hmm.
Pact Act question, will they do away with the 10-year timeline for sinusitis and rhinitis? We don't know what they're going to do in the future, but they have in the past. But meanwhile, if you have any of these problems, file right away. No one knows what's going to happen with the VA. Go ahead.
I think the Pact Act does eliminate that 10-year window.
Really? Good.
And it doesn't do so expressly. It doesn't say we're eliminating the 10-year window, but it provides the presumption for those conditions without a 10-year window. Okay. So it doesn't, there's no 10-year limit written into the Pact Act. And so that's the case. I think that automatically eliminates VA's 10-year window that it wrote in its regulation. Does that make sense?
Makes great sense.
Oh.
On my entry exam 36 years ago, I checked the box for recurrent back pain. I recently retired and have been diagnosed with degenerative joint disease and bilateral lower extremity radiculopathy. The VA says pre-service. What would you do with that, Carrie?
Oh, I'd appeal it and get a medical. Well, I'd be curious too. You marked it on your exit physical, if I understood that question right. And they said it's pre-service. How long did you serve? Because you won a whole enlistment or something, and it wasn't marked on your entrance exam. You get the presumption of soundness, and I don't, unless you had a couple of months worth of service, I don't see how they're going to overcome the presumption of soundness on something like that.
Well, he said that he had checked the box, so that he had back problems in the past.
That it was so it was noted on entrance. Is that?
Yes, on my entry exam, he checked the box. But like you said, if he was in the service for a number of years,
then you're gonna did you get treatment for it in the service? All right, if you did, that could be evidence of a worsening, or in other words, an aggravation. If that's the case, there could be a presumption of aggravation for a condition noted at entrance. So it depends on how VA developed it and how they decided what the evidence says. If not, you might need a medical opinion showing how the service did aggravate it. And so yeah, you could run into a situation where you have to prove that in that scenario.
Stephen Jones, I have hypothyroidism. Please explain 30% after 6 months. Then use correct DC for residentials.
Residuals, I think.
Residuals, I'm sorry. Well, it says residentials, residuals.
Okay. Are they just looking for an explanation of?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm making some assumptions here. I might not be answering the question right. But there are a number of things. Tuberculosis is a good one. We don't see it really anymore. That used to have staggered ratings because it was always going to be more severe early on than it was going to be once they got it under control, with some exceptions, obviously. I do think it's hypothyroidism is similar to that, but with hypothyroidism, to me, the real question is not how high of a rating can you get for hypothyroidism, because you typically aren't going to get that high.
Right.
Has the hypothyroidism caused other problems?
Exactly. Heart.
Congestive heart failure is a good one. If you had hypothyroidism that's been long-standing and that went untreated, like a lot of them have been, then you might have a lot of side effects from that, and those all make very good secondary claims.
That's your best claims. So once again, I would Google hypothyroidism causes and see what comes up and see if you have these things and file for them, because that's where you're going to get your benefit. And remember, a lot of these claims are going back some great deal in time. And if when you had hypothyroidism, the records were showing you also had congestive heart failure, other things, then they should have given you benefits for those back then. Don't you think, Carrie?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, NEMR is a perfect example in that scenario. Not to get into NEMR if you're not aware of it, but it is a mechanism that helps get you an earlier effective date for herbicide-related conditions. And that same effective date should apply to residuals that were in the record at the time. So yeah, I've seen a few cases that were really great because of that, and other ones that you just hardly found any residuals at all from the hypothyroidism. Maybe they caught it early, and it's been treated. And it is something that can be treated quite easily if caught early. So it's not going to be the thing in all the cases that gets you a high level of benefits, but in some it will.
This is a good question about from G. Henders 100. Should I submit a supplemental claim for hypertension that was denied in November of 2021? He's a Vietnam veteran. Do you think he should file supplemental or higher level review? Should he appeal that? Or
I think it should be a supplemental because the Pact Act is going to be considered a new law, because it is, and that is going to be the new and relevant evidence for a supplemental claim. I would not risk VA taking the AMA to a crazy level of saying, well, the Pact Act is, that was not in existence when this claim was decided in November of 2021. So that's evidence we can't consider. We are filing supplemental claims on those, citing the Pact Act as new and relevant evidence. And because it's going to get you to the same place, but that's how I would do that. And with the surviving spouses, they actually, since they're a little bit different here, they actually have to come in and do a new claim and request that original claim be sort of readjudicated. And that's how we're doing those as well. So I would just, as a matter of uniformity, keep it easy.
And I skipped a question I was ready to answer, and then somehow I think it's a widow that said her husband died of COPD. Can she reopen that? And the answer is yes. She should file a DIC claim for that. And I'm sorry, can't find that right now. My husband was exposed to Agent Orange and died from COPD. Does he qualify under the Pact Act? Ooh, under the Pact Act.
Yeah, no, I'm afraid.
No. But I would, we've won a lot of claims where we've connected Agent Orange with COPD. So I think she definitely could file a DIC claim. I've had my expert, Pisano has.
Yeah, I wouldn't limit it to that either. Now, here's what I would have to say about that, though. If he had COPD, I bet he had hypertension.
Yeah. I bet he had a whole bunch of things.
And so I might do a claim based on the hypertension and whatever it might have caused and try to seek DIC that way.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a little bit, because it just has to be a contributory cause of death, even if it didn't cause the COPD. Exactly. And most of the time, if you've got something, if you're elderly in age and you've got high blood pressure, that's going to have an impact on some of that stuff. So I might take the easier way out.
Remember, DIC claims are active right now. Mm-hmm. And well, the thing is, though, if he was denied before, it'll go back to there. So I would definitely reassert any of the claims that you think should be service connected to see if you get to go back to when you've originally filed them, because that could be a big claim for you.
Yeah, and that's a real good point, Carol, because he wouldn't have had to have been denied service connection for hypertension.
Right.
You would have had to have been denied DIC.
Exactly.
And if you can show now that the hypertension played a role in the death of your previously denied DIC claim, they could be on the hook to re-adjudicate that from the beginning. And that's why I would go that route.
These are complicated. Once again, you may want somebody to help you with this because it's the way you present it. The VA is not going to assume anything. They're going to pick the thing that they can deny easiest. So you definitely want to make sure that you have somebody help you on that. We're getting a lot of questions now. I'm a Gulf War veteran and this is Jimmy Elmore, and I have asthma. Do I need a Nexus letter for presumption? That's the great thing about this law. You don't need it anymore. You just need to show you were there and you have this problem that is presumed service connection. That's all you need to do. And it's supposed to make these so much easier for you. What's the next step after your appeal is denied? That's, so under the new law, you file a 526 if that's clearly a new claim. And if that's denied, then you can file a higher level review. But remember, they're not going to consider any new evidence you put in there. Or you can go back and file a supplemental appeal and put in new evidence. Handyman claimed major depression. C&P says I have PTSD, but they granted 70% major depression. Should I claim PTSD or mental disorder also? Thank you. Carrie?
I'm going back over that question real quick. I have PTSD.
It's Handyman.
I think we have major depression. Should I claim PTSD? Personally, no.
Yeah.
If you got 70%, if they add PTSD to it, it's going to say, service connection has been granted for depression, PTSD, or depression and PTSD. Not going to give you a second rating. And I would have a hard time believing that a doctor was able to look at depression that severely and PTSD and say, well, the depression is causing this and the PTSD is causing that. In other words, that's probably an overly complicated way of saying I don't think the PTSD, simply by its nature of being added to the code sheet and the rating, would bump that up to 100%. I think they probably already rated the totality under the 70%. If you're not working and you want to try to get 100%, if the 70 is all you got, I would go for TDIU. I just don't, but if they add PTSD to it, it's not going to increase your chances for getting TDIU. I don't think.
Remember, there's the concept of pyramiding. The VA is not going to, if you have one mental condition and a totally separate condition that are service connected, they're only going to pay you for which one is rated higher. So once you get service connected for a mental condition, I'm with Carrie. Most of the time, I don't want to change the name of it. I want to make sure I get it up to at least 70% or what I think I'm entitled to. But you've already got what I think you should. So now I'd be working on something else. Like you said, TBIU. This is Michael LaFew. Does the Pact only cover the Persian Gulf area? I retired in 2007, recently diagnosed and treated for prostate cancer at 52 years of age. I'm not quite sure. You have to tell us why you think the prostate cancer, if you weren't in the Gulf area, why do you think the prostate cancer is service connected? Don't you think, Carrie, we need to know that?
Well, yeah, when I read that, I said, does the Pact Act only cover Persian Gulf? Well, no, it doesn't cover only the Persian Gulf, but the question doesn't tell us where you served. It depends on what you call the Persian Gulf, sort of. But yeah, Afghanistan, I mean, there's other places that the Pact Act, but it's all kind of considered the Gulf War theater. So if your question is premised on, you served stateside your whole career, then no, it's not gonna cover you. So I don't know. Give us more info on the question.
Yeah.
Where did you serve? But yeah, it is more places than just the Gulf area. If you consider Israel and Egypt and Afghanistan and all those places, in addition to the Gulf.
Exactly. Kerman Wingfield, Desert Storm vet, sleep apnea, and diagnosed with sarcoidosis. 10%. Will the Pact Act help? I'm not. So I don't. Are you service connected for those already, or?
Yeah, I read. Yeah, to me that sounds like you're getting 10% for the sarcoidosis. If that's the case, then no, the Pact Act's not going to force them to give you a higher rating.
Right.
If it's not service connected, though, yes, the Pact Act will help.
Okay, Joe Smith, if you live in Texas, use the Texas Veterans Commission to help you with your claim. They will file on your behalf and act as your agent. It's free. The VSOs are good at filing claims for you. The problem is, once you get beyond that, often you need more help. That's all I'm going to say. EOE. Oh, here's Tomcat. Hi, I have pulmonary hypertension and had spent a year in Afghanistan with plenty of trips to the burn pits. I had filed a claim in 2019 and was denied. What do you recommend, Carrie?
I would file another claim, and I would keep that thing open until you got the benefit. Pulmonary hypertension is not, it's a little weird thing, but Pact Act, no Pact Act. All right. Let me put it that way. I'd take that case and I'd fight it. Pact Act is just going to help. I don't recall, is pulmonary hypertension in there expressly as such?
I don't think so.
Let's see. Yeah, well, here's what I would say about that. If you have pulmonary hypertension, and it doesn't seem to be expressly on the list as such, I have not seen a case of pulmonary hypertension where the pulmonary hypertension stands on its own, right, as a disability that, and without you having something else. There's a lot of pulmonary conditions that can lead to pulmonary hypertension. And I'm wondering to bet if you have some of those. Even if you don't, I would file the claim and fight that. Absolutely. Pulmonary hypertension can be kind of deadly.
So pulmonary fibrosis may be causing pulmonary hypertension.
Sure.
Heart problem may be causing it. So that's what you need to look for. I'm with Carrie. I've never seen that. And I don't see it listed as a presumptive. We have gone way over. It is 12:30. And it was great to be with you all today. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer everybody's questions. Carrie, it's great to see you and be with you as always.
Thank you.
Tune in. We'll be here next week. And next week, we're going to go over a different part of the Pact Act. Have a great week. Bye. Bye, Carrie.